Welcome to another episode of Homefront. It's Rome, and today we have with us Dr. Paula Robertson, a consultant with the Pediatric Emergency Department at Mount Hope, right?
Yep.
And in one of our previous episodes, we spoke to Dr. Asha Pemberton. And Dr. Pemberton was telling us about the adolescent mind and the adolescent brain. And today we want to touch a bit about that in terms of drugs and how it's affected by drugs. But first, before we dive into any of those things, let me ask you, the adolescent brain, why is it so vulnerable?
Ooh, I like that question, Rome. Thanks again for having me on the home front. I like to think of the adolescent brain as a work in progress. And what happens is that the brain is still developing. We now realize the brain is still developing and growing up until age 24. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So that mind don't develop it too late.
Well, I'm going to say no comment to that one. But specifically, the part of the brain that is the last to develop is a part called the prefrontal cortex.
Right.
And that's the part that governs our higher decision making. So things like our judgments and being able to weigh things up and make a balanced decision. In the adolescent brain, there's a long period of development during which the main part of the brain that develops is an area known as the limbic system. That's the area that's driven by emotions and impulses predominantly.
Okay.
Now that doesn't mean that teenagers can't learn to make good decisions. They absolutely can. But it's the reason why a lot of teens and adolescents often make impulsive decisions. They often go off the bat, right?
So talking about impulsive decisions and things that affect their brain itself, I was hearing about this drink called lean.
All right.
Now,
yeah.
I thought this was an American thing, but I didn't know that this was present right here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, no. So I have to say, one of the things I love about my job is I learn so much on it. And this is one of the things I definitely have learned during my time in pediatric emergency. First of all, the fact that the adolescent brain is as it is means that adolescents and teens are uniquely susceptible to addiction because the brain then becomes really sensitive to seeking that dopamine hit. And one of the first things I discovered working in pediatric emergency is, yes, lean is in Trinidad and Tobago. What is it, you ask?
We're selling lean. How they accessing lean?
Well, you're making it. So lean.
Oh, you make it?
You make it. So lean is a concoction, basically, that's drunk. And essentially, it's a mixture of three things. You need to have a codeine-containing cough syrup.
No, wait. Disclaimer, we are not teaching you all how to make lean here, right?
No,
we
that's
just
a
find
good
it
point.
out.
Yeah.
Yes, disclaimer. Right.
Mixed with a chaser, so something like 7-Up or Mountain Dew or something like that, for instance. And usually a hard candy of some sort, like a lifesaver to give it a color. Yeah, so it may look like a soft drink when it's put together. The real hit is often in the cough syrup. There are two main drug components. One is the codeine itself, and the other is something called promethazine, both of which can cause a little bit of a hit. Now, codeine,
So what's its effect on the
the
adolescent when you drink it? What happens?
Yeah, so in the short term, it causes things like maybe a sense of euphoria, a sense of feeling a bit dissociated from what's happening in front of you. Just remember that a lot of teens are mistakenly using this to escape from things that they see as stressful. But it's not healthy because in the longer run, it does cause effects on things like your ability to learn and process information, how you are able to deal with emotions and feelings, for instance. And it does seem to cause damage to the brain long term.
Permanently?
Yes, as far as we know, yeah. So I definitely would say it's not a safe drug to experiment with. Remember, the teen brain is different from the adult brain.
But then somebody might say, okay, but if I'm accustomed taking cough syrup, and I'm accustomed drinking a soft drink, and I'm accustomed eating a candy, then if I combine all three, then why is it?
Well, not all cough syrups are created the same. Your average cough syrup is fine for a cough, within reason, but it's the codeine component of it that's the problem. So a lot of countries have actually, that have been struggling with codeine addiction, have actually looked at either banning codeine containing cough syrups totally, or regulating it a lot more, so you cannot go and buy it over the counter. And that's actually something I would really advocate for.
Okay, so we have to be careful with the cough syrups that we use here when it comes to that contain codeine when it comes to adolescent minds.
Yeah, absolutely.
And something else that is now very, very popular with the youth, not even, I could say no, for generations, it would be marijuana.
Oh, yeah.
And I know there's this talk between the THC and the CBD. And a lot of people don't know the difference. And then how does each affect the mind of an adolescent? Because
Sure.
you're kind of narrowing down on them.
So the plant, the cannabis plant, is a fascinating plant, and there's still a lot that we're learning about it and its biochemical potentials. But two main classes of drugs, or chemical components, I should say, that come out of your standard cannabis plant. Now remember, there's more than one strain of plant, but essentially you're going to have your THC compounds, tetrahydrocannabinoids. Those are the ones that give you the high.
The high.
Yeah, that's
right.
the compound that gives you the conventional high that everybody knows or associates with.
Yeah, when they
with
smoke it and they see a green man and they see all kind of thing, right?
And then the other main component is CBD, cannabidiol, which is a component that's now been looked at more in medicine for its potential health benefits for things like pain management and chronic pain, patients with cancer, for instance, dealing with people who have problems with nausea and vomiting, for example, and chemotherapy. So there's some exciting potential with that. Now, the issue is a few things. The issues are a few things that in order to make CBD, you do need to distill it out of the plant. And medical grade CBD is required to have very little percentage of THC, so that it shouldn't make you high. Yeah, high grade CBD does. But I have come across people who have been trying to distill and make their own thing. And the problem with that is that it can contain varying amounts of THC components, and so you still can have that high effect.
So that's the CBD and the THC. So let's say the marijuana plant itself that they would smoke. A lot of teenagers are curious. They're in secondary school. And their friend would say, come and take a little pull with me now, boy. Or the girls as well, they would take a pull and they would start smoking it. How does the marijuana affect their minds?
Yeah, so the other thing is just to know a little bit of history, that over time, plants have been bred with higher and higher concentrations of THC. So compared to the 70s, for instance, the marijuana plants that we often can come across now can have as much as 30% THC component. It's about several times stronger than plants a few generations ago. And so getting a hold of high grade or very concentrated plants can sometimes mean you get quite a hit. Remember, it comes back to that teen brain growing, developing, being susceptible to addiction. And also the fact that as adults, we are giving mixed messages to our teens. Think back to when you were a teenager, right? If you saw everybody around you trying out edibles and smoking and so on, and they said, well, this is not for you, right?
And now you want to try
exactly,
it.
Right? You want to try it. So there needs to be that recognition that normal teenagers are going to be curious and they're going to try things that seem to be available and fun for everybody else. So we do need to be aware of the messages that we're giving our teens. But the real message, I'd say, is that you got to recognize that brain is still susceptible. We know that if you do get started with marijuana, it does seem to affect things like learning, what's known as cognition. And this definitely does seem to be irreversible. So the longer you're on marijuana and you're smoking it regularly, so regular use seems to be associated with poorer school performance, a higher rate of dropout from school, for instance, and reduction a reduction in sort of lifetime achievement. So I'd say bear in mind that actually you've got to weigh all things up, and just remember that your brain is a really important part of who you are, and in order to achieve your fullest potential, you need to allow for maximum healthy growth. Yeah.
And now with the youths, I'm seeing a big trend in vaping.
Oh yeah.
So tell me a bit about that, because
Okay.
I'm not familiar with it. I just see a huge puff of smoke come out, and I'm like, these children are dragons? Because to me, when I was going to school, it was either you would, if you were a smoker, it would have been people would have tried cigarettes or they would have tried marijuana, and you would get this amount of smoke. Now with this vaping, I've seen a big cloud of smoke.
So it's actually not smoke. It's in fact usually water vapor. So vaping, the term, the verb, basically comes from using a vape device. It's also known as ENDS. It stands for an electronic nicotine delivery device or agent. And essentially what happens is that they're used, depending on the brand that you're using, there can be cartridges or a pod for liquid components. And that is then heated, allowing for release of water vapor. So you don't get the release of tobacco products that you would have with conventional smoking. So a lot of the byproducts of burning tobacco leaves aren't there. The issue, though, of a few things. Although officially, a lot of these devices are not marketed, or they're not meant to be targeted towards teenagers. By the very nature of some of the newer devices, and you talked about a lot of water vapor. Those are the sort of older generation. The newer generations can be really neat. They can look like memory sticks. They're really cool colors. You can interchange. You can change the skins, for instance. They come in flavors like Tutti Frutti and Mango Madness and so on, which are clearly targeted towards young people. And so there's been some marketing here that has been really aimed at young people. And the other thing, because they are so fruity flavored, people don't recognize how much nicotine content there is. So in one of the pods that you smoke, for instance, it's the nicotine equivalent of a whole pack of cigarettes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how does this affect the adolescent brain?
So what happens in the short run, example, when you do first start vaping, people often find that it helps with their concentration and their focus, for instance. But in the long run, again, the teen brain is susceptible to injury and damage. What you tend to find is that it does tend to cause issues with maintaining that very same focus and attention. Problems with irritability, difficulty with emotional control, so you tend to have swings in emotions. And even more concerning is something known as VALI, or vaping-associated lung injury. And it's thought that not just the nicotine, but some of the compounds that are used in the devices, they're often drugs like components like propylene glycol and so on, burning those at heat, nobody knows what's the effects of those on your lungs, and it seems to cause quite significant lung damage and injury. And that's irreversible. So when I've come across teens who've had it, they've often find that their exercise tolerance is much less. They used to be able perhaps to be athletes at school. They can't do it. They can't walk up the stairs.
Because a lot of people saying now that, okay, it's not a cigarette and it's not as harmful, so they would do the vaping and it's much healthier for them than a cigarette. So I'm glad that you could explain
that was the initial marketing. Yeah. Yeah, that was initial marketing for sure. And now we realize that's probably not the whole story. And in fact, the real story is that the nicotine compound is highly addictive, especially for young brains. It is much more concentrated than an ordinary cigarette. And coming off it is really, really hard. So withdrawal symptoms are things like headaches, vomiting, nausea. I mean, getting kids coming in with that is they try to stop suddenly, and then they really feel quite ill or quite sick. So I'd say definitely seek for help, because you probably need a little medical support to kind of come off of vaping. It is tough. You just say try not to get on this thing, because it is really difficult and hard to come off, and you're 8 times more likely to switch to conventional cigarettes.
Because I'm glad that you explain all of this. I know a couple parents myself who have teenagers, and when I've seen them with this vaping thing, they say, no, don't worry, no, that's harmful. I mean, it's harmless. Sorry, that's harmless. It's just this vapor that they do it and whatever. That's a young people thing. They just want to look like if they're smoking, but they're not really smoking. Yeah. So you all heard it for yourself from Dr. Robertson. So thank you very much for that explanation. And we're going to dive right inside and relax. Take some deep breaths with our mindfulness moment.
Welcome to this mindfulness moment. I invite you to bring a little mindfulness into things that you do every single day. So I'm holding a glass of water, and if you have one nearby, maybe you can hold it as well and join me in this exercise. So just taking a moment to notice what it feels like to hold the glass. We often just pick it up and drink so quickly, we don't pay attention to the weight of the glass in your hand. Taking a moment, you might notice how the light reflects in the glass, or even just see the reflection of your fingers through the water and what that looks like. Then you could smell the water. Maybe it has a flavoring, maybe you're drinking juice, it has a different scent. Or maybe you don't notice anything at all, and that's okay. And then I invite you to take a sip and just notice what that sensation feels like of the water coming into your mouth and going down into your throat, quenching your body. Notice if you take a big gulp or if you take little sips. And it's a simple exercise like this, where we slow down doing ordinary things that remind us to be here now.
And I always feel a bit more relaxed after a mindfulness moment. So right now we want to thank you very much, Dr. Robertson, for being here with us. And one thing I must say before you go is that you mentioned the whole coolness factor of the vaping, because I know we spoke about the effects of the marijuana, the effects of the lean, and the effects of the vaping on the adolescent mind. And I would just throw that out there in terms of the vaping, because I know with the teens and the adolescents, it seems very cool in terms of how it looks with the cloud of vapor that they put out. Some of the devices are colorful, they light up, but we also have to be mindful of the effects and the long-term effects of it, right? So thank you very much. And now we're going to jump inside one of your questions for today.
Hello, Homefront. I found you on Facebook and was interested in your post. My name is Natalie Houston and I'm from Kent. And my question for you is, how do I recognise carer burnout? What are the signs of that and how do I know if it's affecting me?
Hi Natalie, thanks for your question. So let's just start by remembering who we consider to be carers. So a carer is anybody with a major responsibility for looking after an older person. That might be a full-time responsibility or it may be a part-time responsibility. And of course it includes family members as well as professional carers. Some of the common signs of burnout are persistent tiredness, irritability, inability to concentrate, feelings of hopelessness, intolerance of the person for whom you are caring, physical signs as well, sleeplessness, poor appetite, things like headaches, back pain. If you have persistent symptoms like these, it is worth seeking professional help and just finding out if maybe you are being burnt out.
So keep sending those questions and we're going to get our professionals to give you those answers each and every day right here on Homefront. Send it to the email address on your screen or to our Homefront TTIG. We love it. We love the energy that you all bring with these questions. And remember, knowledge is power right here on Homefront. So we want to thank you very much for joining us for another insightful episode. Thank you very much to the Heritage in Cascade for accommodating us for this episode. And thank you to the PED CARES Foundation. Remember, they partner with local and international organizations and they support the entire pediatric unit right there at the Mount Hope Hospital. So keep supporting them. They support the kids. And we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us once again on the Homefront. My name is Rome. Take it easy. See you tomorrow. Episodes, we had